62. As you find your place in Psalm 62, I give a little update as I have one. If you'd have asked me last week, perhaps the week before, you'd asked me the week before last, when did I think we would be in the building? Well, I probably would have said, I don't know, probably Christmas. But in my mind, I thought we might be in this coming Sunday. I can assure you that's not the case. But I thought 2 weeks ago that might be the case. And today, what I've been waiting for about 8 days, I got one more step in the process just before I got to the service, which is not the last step, but I've been waiting on it for quite a while. So I got one more step, and hopefully tomorrow, the promise I got from the email, I'll have another step in the process, and then we'll, of course, from there go back to the county. So I say that somewhat to update you. It's not much of an update until I tell you we're really ready to get it, but I do want you to pray about it. I know you're praying about it. So there is just unusual, and it's probably not unusual in construction, but from a church's standpoint, it's just unusual the opposition that we're not getting in this building. It's no one particular thing. It's not really the one particular county executive or anything like that. It's just some unusual type things that are taking place from the providence of God, but yet I don't want to take it as that we don't need to pray that there might be satanic opposition involved, and just pray that if we stay out of the building, we want God to keep us out, not the devil. I'll put it that way. So let's just pray continually that God would open that door for us, that we would get in sooner than later. I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I tell you that reservedly because I don't want you to stop praying, but hopefully things are starting to come together. And so let's just pray more fervently, if that be the case. Psalm 62, if you'll find your place there. I want to read as a text, and we're going to look at this psalm. But I want you to note verse 5. The Bible says, "My soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from Him." Now, if you were to look through the Psalms, we, of course, were in Psalm 51 last week, and all the way up to Psalm 63, there's a number of references in the introductions to David being in the wilderness and fleeing from Saul. And of course, that was in the early part of his, before he was even king. Now, we know there's no chronology involved in the book of Psalms. I mean, God obviously placed them here for a purpose, and they go along more with theme than they do chronology, because David obviously sinned, and verse 51 is his psalm of repentance very clearly. And then there's some references to his fleeing from Saul. But when you come to Psalm 62, there's a theme here that fits in. And you see some of the repeated themes through the book of Psalms. We've dealt with some of these. But I want you to think about that in verse 5. It says, "My soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from Him." If there's a theme to Psalm 62, and you'll see this recurring, it is not just wait upon God, not just trust God, not just pray to God, not just expect things from God. All of that's important, but here's the key word is Him alone. Do you know it wasn't unusual for a heathen person during the time that David was writing this psalm? Certainly it's always been true in the world. It's still true today in many places that are they paint it up with what looks like civilization, but it still comes down to it. Man is incurably idolatrous. Now, the reason he is man is built, designed by God to know God. So when man fell, whatever that place is that God fits inside of me, that is, I was to have a relationship with Him, it is void, it's empty. Man is looking for a God. But the problem is, because he's a fallen creature, he always looks for the wrong one. So wouldn't it be human nature that if I think, well, I finally have found my God, it's the sun. I mean, and people worship the sun, right? It's got to be. It's powerful. It's bigger than the earth. It's up there every day. It rises. It must have power to come up out of the east like that and set in the west. And so I'm going to worship the sun. And boy, that's my God. But what's going to happen? You can pray to that God all day. I get no peace, no satisfaction. I just can't, I don't sense there's any connection. So what do? I look for another God. Still may keep that one just in case, because I never know. Maybe that God will help me as well. He sends the sun. I'm going to pray now to the stars because they're out there. And then the planets. And, they're so far away, maybe I need something closer. And so I'm going to carve a tree and put a face on it. And I'm going to pray to that. Now, what I'm describing has been happening thousands and thousands of years. Man is incurably idolatrous. Now, it wouldn't be unusual for me to say, wait thou upon God, and if He doesn't do it, then maybe this God will do it, maybe this God will do it. But what is unique about Christianity and Bible believers, and what is unique, of course, about even in the Old Testament, before you would have called it Christianity, knowing God Jehovah, we are the only religion, so-called, that believes in one way, God alone. Think about it, even so-called Christian religions. I use that term loosely. So-called Christian religions, yes, Christ is important. Yes, His death on the cross is significant. Even if they believe in word, in the resurrection, that's very much a part of what we do, but it's only part of it. I believe Jesus is important, but you've got to get confirmed. Jesus is important, but you have to be baptized. Jesus is important, but you have to learn this catechism. Jesus is important, but after all, we got to feed the poor. It's always something else that I need tangible, but what is certainly unique, because it is biblical, and this is emphasized here, it is not God plus, it is God alone. Now, you know what it takes to believe it's God alone? It takes trust. That's when you really got to trust, when it's God alone. Now, I've told this story before, but it so well illustrates this point, and you've heard it. But a fella falls off the cliff, and he's sliding down, he's grasping anything he can, and he grabs a root, and he's hanging there by that root. No way to go up, no way to go down. So he starts to help. Somebody up there, help me. And a deep voice comes from heaven. Trust me. Let go of the root. Is anybody else up there? That didn't seem like a good solution. Let go of the root. You know what it takes to let go of that root? Trust. Now, if you said let go of the root, or you hang on to it and I'll come rescue you, that's fine. Or let go and there's a ledge below you. But to totally just let go because God told you to, that's God alone. Just Him. Now, several things I note here. You go back to verse 1, and I see there's expectation. Now, truly my soul waiteth upon God. Now, the wait, if we've seen this come up again and again, it's not just that I'm waiting because I have to. There is a wait here with expectation. My Scofield Reference Bible puts down as the thought here of be silent, as the word means be silent, but the idea is not so much that you don't talk back. You don't ask for an explanation. You wait without complaint. That is, I know God's going to come through because I am expecting Him to work. Now, what am I expecting from God? What might I expect from Him? And by the way, Him alone. He says, my soul waiteth upon God. From Him cometh my salvation. And notice the word shows up here in verse 2. He only is my rock. Now, salvation comes from God. We know that salvation, in a sense that we think of it, we think of salvation, of being saved from our sin, going to heaven. The psalmist, of course, could have that in mind too, but he's thinking about being physically saved from his enemy, from difficulty. But either way, my true salvation, that is going to heaven, what really matters, what does it matter what man does to me on this earth? I'm going to go to heaven. My salvation is from God. Now, you're hopefully tonight a good, fundamental, Bible-believing, independent, temperamental Baptist. We know where we're coming from. It's not new to us, but to understand this is new to the world, that there is no other way to heaven. Now, plenty of people know Jesus has something to do with salvation, the Bible, and so forth, but they literally just believe he's part of it. You got to go through a ritual. You got to go through maybe a priest. You got to at least talk to a preacher. I mean, there's got to be some kind of communion involved. Do you understand? There is no other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. It is not Jesus plus. It is certainly not religion. It is a person, and it is Him alone. Salvation comes from Him. So He waits upon God because that's where His salvation is going to come from. Now, you know, when I think of that idea of wait, in fact, He mentions it again in verse 7. He says, in God is my salvation and my glory, the rock of my strength. I mean, God is His salvation. That in itself, the implication with the onlys in here is God is not His salvation along with other things. I mean, do we see examples of this in the Old Testament? When the reliance was on the Lord, there was no battle they couldn't win. I mean, even to the point that Jehoshaphat was ready to go to a battle he could not possibly win, and the prophet came to him and said, believe God's prophets and you're going to prosper. Rely on the Lord. And he said, here's my instructions for you. Go ahead and have a Pentecostal spell before the enemy even gets here, and that's all it'll take. And they began to praise God and shout and thank God for winning the battle, and the enemy hadn't even shown up. And they didn't even have to do anything. God just wiped them out. I mean, God just took care of the enemy because they relied on the Lord. Now, we rely on Him for our salvation. But you know, I noticed too is this word rock in verse 2. He only is my rock. Well, I believe I can also depend upon Him for my solidity. That is, He is a rock, and of course my salvation. And notice He is my fence. I shall not be greatly moved. Now, the psalmist starts off, says, I'll not be greatly moved. You know what that kind of implies? It almost implies that I might be moved a little bit. You know, even David is going to progress in this psalm, because I look a little bit further down to verse 6, and after he thinks about this and he goes through it and begins to meditate, He only is my rock. He's not just my rock. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be moved at all. You know, God is a rock. You know what Jesus said in Matthew 16:18? Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Yeah, I'm glad to know that the church is not built on a man's dogma. Now, churches, so-called, assemblies might be, but the one that God established, His church, is built on the Lord Jesus Christ. That's a pretty solid foundation. You know, the Bible says over in 1 Peter 2:6 that about His being the rock, and of course it's quoting an Old Testament passage. It says that whosoever believeth on Him shall not be confounded. He is the rock, the underlying foundation of the church. And even an Old Testament character, we see this come up again and again. David, Moses, they understood, and what would you use as a illustration for a solid foundation that's better than a rock? I mean, you can build something on concrete, and concrete will break and splinter, and you have to replace it. I mean, that's man-made foundation out of limestone. But you know, every once in a while, they'll dig down a building real deep, and they have to keep digging until they hit bedrock. Now, when they hit bedrock, they know whatever they build on top of that isn't going anywhere. So here's Moses and David, who are simply trying to express, of course, the Spirit of God's given them the words, but in their own language, there's nothing they could think of any stronger than a rock. It doesn't matter if it's sand, doesn't matter if it's hardened clay. There's just the rock as the foundation. And they said, you know, that's what my faith is built on. Now, that's a pretty good foundation. So through Him, I can expect to be solid. Well, then I also notice I've got security in verse 2 again. He is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. So in verse 6, he says it again. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. Now, God is a defender. He is my security. I see the different references we've seen earlier in these Psalms where it talks about God keeping me in a secure place, in a hiding place, behind Him. Now, His security that He offers me, the defense that I have, who am I being secured from? Well, I think about, first of all, in Ephesians chapter 6, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, the rulers of the spiritual wickedness in high places, rulers of the darkness of this world. He says, take unto you the whole armor of God. You know, my first thought would be to fight the battle myself, wouldn't it? But he says, take the armor of God. Because again, who can give me defense? It's not God plus something else. It's God alone. It's only Him who offers my defense. Now, in the context of this, look back to verse 3. He mentions his enemies here. He says, how long will you imagine mischief against a man? You shall be slain, all of you, as a bowing wall. You shall be as a tottering fence. They only consult to cast him down from his excellency. They delight in lies. They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly. Do you know the devil is called the father of lies? He was a murderer from the beginning, abode not in the truth, because there's no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of himself, for he is a liar and the father of it. Now, if my enemy is the devil, if my enemy is the prince of the power of the air and the spiritual wickedness in high places and so forth, if he starts the conspiracy and then he works down through his host and then they affect human beings and that's our enemy, what would we expect that enemy to do? Lie. Now, you observe, if you would, it works. I wish I could refute it. I wish I could stop it. I wish I could tell you tonight and it would never happen again. But do you know that one of the great, I say tricks, but certainly one of the devices of the devil, since he's the father of lies, without going into great detail, but since he influences leaders, we know from the book of Daniel, the leaders were called, basically the demons had the same name as the leader on the earth because they're assigned to them. So whether a man is even godly or ungodly, we know as soon as he gets in a position of power, the demons behind him is assigned to him and he's working on him in a special way. Whether he gets through it, that doesn't have to happen, but he's there. Now, if that's true, he's going to influence those people to do what? To lie. How many of you ever known a lying politician? Okay, right. All right. How many of you are alive tonight and breathing? Okay. It's got to be true. What reputation does a politician have? We laugh about it, but there's a reason for the stereotype. Actually, I did know one honest politician. Well, no, actually, he lied to me too. Never mind. The fact is, the devil uses lies. Now, it's so remarkable when you look back here and you notice it says they delight in lies in verse 4. They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly. Is that not somebody who says something that you want to hear, smiles at you, sounds great? We've got your best interest at heart. We're trying to do exactly what's best for you. Inwardly, they're a liar. Do you know if you tell a lie that's big enough and bold enough, and you say it often enough, people will believe it? Now, I'm going to use this as an illustration, and I can't be dogmatic about this because, frankly, I haven't read it. But they passed a law in Georgia about elections. I've not read the law, but I've heard people who have read it who advocate it. I've heard people who don't advocate it. I don't know if they've read it or not. But I know originally it came out pretty strong that this law is racist. This law won't let you take the people a bottle of water if they're in line. It shuts the polls down at 5 o'clock when everybody gets off of work. Here, just a whole list of stuff, and this was on the mainstream news. This is what everybody's hearing. It's totally against anybody who's not white. It's you can't carry somebody a bottle of water. And you first hear that, and you're thinking, well, why would you pass a law that wouldn't let somebody give somebody a bottle of water. Why would you pass a law that closes the polls at 5 o'clock? That sounds like a conspiracy to try to get somebody into office. You're trying to, that just sounds terrible. Come to find out, none of that stuff's in the law. That's totally a lie. But if you tell it bold enough and often enough, and a man with a suit gets up on it and looks very seriously at you and says, this is what happened. I mean, people begin to believe it. Do you know a lie will spread much faster than the truth? Now, that's just one simple illustration, but I'm going to shock you tonight. You ain't going to believe this. Not everything that they tell you in the news is accurate. Now, I'm not on some kind of political agenda tonight. I'm just telling you the devil is a liar. Don't just buy into everything you hear, because what's going to happen when the Antichrist comes, which, by the way, I won't be here. I'll be raptured out. I'm not even warning you about that time if you're a Christian, because you won't be here. But it's so obvious. What are they going to believe? They are going to believe the lie. It's going to be easy to convince the masses. The devil's been practicing for years. He'll be able to do it with no problem. And then add on top of that lying wonders. They are going to be deceived. So how in the world am I not going to be deceived? How am I going to be protected from that? I mean, there's some pretty smart people out there saying all these things. How am I not going to be swept in? Sometimes people do get swept in. I'll tell you why. Because I have a defender. God is my defender. Now, here's where you got to be careful. My own brain is not my defender. God alone is my defender. Now, God may use my brain. He may use my common sense. But don't depend on it. Oh, I'm so smart I'd never fall for that. If any man think he stand, let him take heed lest he fall. Oh, I've been around too long. I know too much. They'll never fool me. Now, you know why I'm not going to be fooled? Because of God. Only Him. Were it not for God, and were not for His defense, they'd fool me. They'd fool you. But because God is God, they're not going to talk me into believing Jesus isn't coming, the Bible's not the Word of God, that Jesus isn't the Son of God, that He's not in control, that when it's all said and done, He's going to be king on the throne. I mean, I give God the glory that I believe that, because it's only Him. He is my defender. Now, I see that the enemy is hypocritical, but the enemy is also vain. Look down at verse 9. He mentions them again. He says, surely men of low degree are vanity. Well, we believe that. A little peon who's of low degree, he's vanity. I mean, he's not important anyway, right? He didn't get voted into office. He's just some nobody that doesn't know God. He's vanity. Surely men of low degree are vanity. And men of high degree are a lie to be laid in the balance. They are altogether lighter than vanity. I mean, just a regular old Joe on the street that you've never heard of, he doesn't know Jesus. He really is a zero with the ring rubbed out. I mean, we are too, right? If anything good in us is just Jesus. But he said the folks that are big shots, they're even worse than that. They're altogether lighter. I don't know how you can be lighter than vanity. He's using a balance. He's saying basically, on the balance, you come up to a big zero. He said, but the big shots that lie, that he's talking about, they're even less than zero. I mean, they're a thumb on the bottom of the scale. Now, that's what he's saying about them. You know why? Because they're hypocritical. They're hypocritical and they're vain. They're vanity. You know what God told Belshazzar? You remember the handwriting on the wall? Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. One of the first things he told him was, you've come up short on the balance. You're too light. You've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Do you know a man tonight without Jesus? It doesn't have to be one of these liars that's being controlled by the devil. I'm just talking about anybody who was without Jesus, whether you're the vain or whether you're altogether worse than vain. Without Jesus, you're nothing. I mean, a man might think he's pretty important. I mean, you can own Amazon and have billions of dollars. That doesn't make you important. You can sell PC computers, give a bunch of money to charity, and think you can run the world. That doesn't make you important. I mean, you can be president of the United States, by the way, and a billionaire. That doesn't make you important. If you got Jesus in your heart, then you're somebody. That's what makes you. Now, you could have Jesus in your heart and have some of those other things as well, but what our status comes from Him. I mean, 1,000,000 years from now, if you were the first trillionaire to hit this world, 1,000,000 years from now, if you're in hell, what difference would it make? Not a bit. And yet, if you don't have a copper cent in your pocket and God's providing your daily needs, and you know Jesus, 1,000,000 years from now, that's a big deal. A very big deal. Now, His enemies, He had security from them. But you know, He also had, this is very related, but just slightly distinct, He had safety. Look at verse 7. In God is my salvation and my glory. The rock of my strength, my refuge is in God. You know, we see that word refuge in the Psalms quite often. God is my refuge and strength. To Him I would continually resort. You know, the Bible talks about in the book of Isaiah about a refuge of lies. You know, a refuge of lies is what a person might look to refuge, but the refuge is not going to do the job. The refuge is there as a place where they might think, well, here's where I'm going to go. Somebody might use a bottle of alcohol as a refuge. That's a refuge of lies. You'll find out that it doesn't do the job. There's no place to find refuge there. Somebody else says, I find refuge in an immoral lifestyle. I'll go there and that'll do the job. It doesn't do the job. Someone else perhaps thinks money. If I can make a big bunch of money and have security and a big bank account, that's my refuge. Man, I'll have that's where I'm going to find my safety. Well, I think that's all been fairly proven. None of that is a refuge. But there is a refuge. It's a person. I can continually resort to Him. He gives me safety. Now again, the emphasis is not only is He a refuge, He is not a refuge, He's the refuge. God alone. He says it again in verse 8, trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your heart before Him. God is a refuge for us. You see, I can have expectation from God to be my salvation, to be my solidity, to be my security, and to be my safety. Now, he ends the psalm, and we'll just make a couple of comments and be done. But he ends the psalm in verse 11, and he shows exaltation. You know, because I have expectation, I can have exaltation. Here's what it comes down to. God hath spoken once. Twice have I heard this. And the idea behind that is, it's been said multiple times. Once, I've spoken once. Twice have I heard this, that power belongeth unto God. Also unto thee, O Lord, belongeth mercy, for thou rendest to every man according to his work. Do you know God can be exalted, first of all, because He is the only one who really has power. Who is an authority, really, that God is not the ultimate authority? It's all passed down from God. Once I've heard it spoken, twice it's made it clear, power belongs unto God. Now, many applications for that, but the power for my spiritual life comes from not partially God and partially my ability. It comes from God alone. And how does God express His power? Through the believer, but through the Holy Spirit of God. God's Holy Spirit is the same one that Jesus, when He operated in the power of the Holy Spirit, and God gave Spirit without measure to Him. And if I operate today, I operate in the power of the Holy Spirit, and there is no other means that I can live for Him and be in this world than by the power of God. And power belongs to Him. He gives mercy, He gives judgment, but ultimately, it's Him alone, and that's who we resort to. Let's go ahead and stop there tonight.